7266.
Hour 2 Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, as we continue on a Wednesday, the 25th day of April, 2018, along with Phil Kornblut and Professor Tom Hayes. I'm Will Polancic. Thank you so much for joining us here today. If you missed our first hour, you can check it out online, SportsTalkSC.com. And you can also see our interview there with Mark Kingston, the USC baseball coach. Had a very interesting conversation with him about the Gamecocks' 4-game win streak. They play this weekend in Nashville, taking on Vanderbilt. Clemson will play this weekend in Charlottesville. Before that, they'll have to negotiate their way around the Blue Hose of Presbyterian, a 1-0 lead now for Clemson in Doug Kingsmore Stadium. They are in the top of the third inning there. Clemson beating yesterday Kennesaw State 9-4. We'll talk later on this hour with Newberry head football coach Todd Knight. We'll talk about his spring practice and how things are working up in Newberry. And we'll also talk some more about what's going on here with Baseball America and D1 Baseball's projections for both Clemson and USC, as well as Coastal Carolina in the NCAA baseball tournament. We want to get back more into some of the basketball discussion that we heard earlier today from Condoleezza Rice and the Commission on College Basketball. I don't think we heard enough from the commission, Corn, on the amateurism issue, about the playing of the players issue. And again, so much of what we heard today, it really had no control, or the NCAA really had no control over some of the things that the commission said. Like, they don't have any control over the one and done rule. That's the NBA's rule.
Correct.
They don't have any control necessarily over what the AAU folks say and what the shoe apparel people say. It's kind of all under the jurisdiction of the FBI. And I feel like so much of what the NCAA tried to do today was play the victim. And really, in my mind, people who are following this sport really don't have any sympathy for them because they created this.
Absolutely. That's what we talked about earlier. And you're right. They've sat back on their hands now. And great article I read in Sports Illustrated that nailed it several weeks ago. The NCAA is letting the FBI do its dirty work by doing this investigation. It's something that now I know the FBI's got various powers that the NCAA doesn't have, but the one thing the NCAA does have is the power to punish schools and punish coaches to the point where they won't even think about doing something like this. And now the commission has stepped up and said, recommending that when you punish a school, you give them a 5-year probation in terms of no bowl games and sanctions and things of that nature. And you increase the punishment on coaches who break the rules, who knowingly break the rules, that you can prove that. And that's all well and good. They can increase the penalties and hope that that's a deterrent. But I think there are other things that the NCAA should have been doing a long time ago that is within its powers, because they write the rules. They write the rules about recruiting. And until you address the elephant in the room, and that's recruiting, you're not going to fix anything. And as long as you allow college athletics to be dominated by recruiting, then you're going to have rule breakers, and you're going to have under the table things happen, and you're going to have outside entities getting involved. And I mentioned this earlier, the National Federation of State High School Associations, which governs the high school leagues around the country, and the South Carolina High School League is a member. They issued a statement about what the commission said. And the one piece of the statement that jumped out to me was this, quote, "Further, we still believe that limiting recruiting to the high school season would be the most effective tool in eliminating the unsavory outside influencers." In other words, forget these camps, forget these combines, forget 3-star this and 4-stripe this and paying your $95 to go get a star ranking. Okay. College coaches can only recruit you during your high school season by going and watching your games and judging you by what you do on the field or by your video. And that's where the contact would take place between the recruiter, the coach, and the family. That's where it should take place. But until the NCAA reworks its recruiting calendar and puts in rules to see that happens, you're going to continue to see an industry run amok here, which is now, the recruiting side of things.
And I noticed there's nothing about street agents in here. Apparently they don't exist, according to the NCAA. I see here, suggests agents are allowed to be involved in a player's decision-making process through high school and college. They don't need your permission for that. They already do it.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of similar to baseball.
They care less.
Baseball allows you to retain an advisor or somebody who you call an advisor. A lot of times it's an agent. Sometimes it's a family member.
Boras.
Somebody usually is, if you're the second or fifth cousin of Scott Boras, like you said, something like that happens. But in my mind, the one thing I think is the biggest problem, especially if you get rid of the one and done rule, is the law and unintended consequences by saying, hey, you need these guys to stay eligible through the draft process, and you need them to have the best information possible in order to make a informed decision about whether or not you want to be a part of the G League, you want to be a part of an NBA team, or if you want to actually take your talents to the NCAA level. I think that it's important to have that involvement, but I don't know if it's necessarily the best for the shoe companies and the AAU and the camps to get involved in that regard.
By the way, PC just tied it up. Pesky PC 1-1 with Clemson, top of the third.
They want to take them out of the state, man. This is not. They can't be doing this to Clemson and South Carolina this year, man.
I was glad to see amongst the things that the commission recommended something we talked about here going back several weeks, and that is, let the kids who think they're good enough put their name into the draft. And if they're not drafted, then let them come back, let them go on to college then.
Right.
But again, if you make that college commitment, there has got to be a rule, not a policy, but a rule that if you make the commitment for college, then you're going to be there. You might be like David Robinson. You might go to college as a 6'5" forward and grow into a 7'1" center, but you're going to be there for 3 years. In his case, he had to do the Navy thing too.
Right.
But you're going to be there for at least 3 years, and you're going to take real classes, and you're going to work towards getting a real degree. I mean, that should be the first and foremost objective of any college worth its salt, is to have the athletes, just like the regular students, trying to get a real degree.
The other thing I think probably they didn't address enough was there has to be some limitation on transferring. I think they have to look at that. The other thing I think is scary from an NBA team standpoint is this. When I think she had Condoleezza Rice said that something about if a guy is drafted and they decide after the draft they want to go to school and they hadn't signed with an agent, they can still go to school.
Right. My
deal is this. If I'm sitting there, I'm not going to hire an agent, but I got an agent in my ear, in my parents' ear. So-and-so has been drafted by Utah. I don't want to go there. I'll go to college. So some protection has to be made, and the NBA have to discuss this. Hey, look, we get an extra draft choice next year because this guy reneged on us.
Right.
We drafted him.
Pick because somebody drops out like that.
Exactly, because you're going to have players, and understandably, I know they probably want to use that leverage also, that they want to go to a place they want to go.
I think they should treat it like, here we go, PC taking a 2-1 lead on Clemson.
Crazy.
PC. Anyway, I think you should
party tonight in Clinton.
I think they should treat college athletics like the military. It's a commitment. You go into the military, what do? They feed you, they clothe you, you get to see the world in some form or fashion, and it's what, a 4-year commitment, whatever it is that when you sign up for the military.
I don't know if you're going to get 4 years. You might be able to get 2.
What I'm saying is, when you sign up for college, and they're going to look, I mean, the college is paying for your education. They're putting, uniforms and shoes and socks on you. They're giving you a place to live for free. They're taking care of all your meals except when you go out on your own with your girlfriend. So there should be a forced commitment, and that should be understood. And you know what? On the flip side, as they do now, this should be reinforced. The scholarship should be guaranteed for those 3 years unless you do something unsavory. It should be a commitment both ways there, and cut down on some of this stuff for sure.
I still have some more thoughts about what the committee did not say. We'll also talk more about the Baseball America D1 baseball projections as we continue on Sports Talk. We're about 20 minutes away from the head coach of Newberry, Todd Knight, joining us as well. Plenty more to get to on your Palmetto Sports Connection for the evening, as we always do here. Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
Welcome back to Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. We're going to talk to Newberry head coach Todd Knight coming up next here, at least the next 15 minutes. Presbyterian with a 2-1 lead on Clemson right now. Remember, Presbyterian, it was just a week ago or 8 days ago when they beat South Carolina at Founders Park, and right now they have a lead on Clemson. And Clemson, of course, trying to play through an 18-inning midweek schedule, which I think is very ambitious, at least for this time of the year. But as we've been talking about earlier in the week and earlier today, it's something that could help them come time for the NCAA tournament, having to play a lot of games in a short amount of time, and should be interesting to see how they negotiate their way through this. We got a question on our Periscope, which we invite you to bring here, of course, at SportsTalkSC on Periscope if you are watching us on our feed, which you can also find at SportsTalkSC.com. We encourage you to chime in, and we get access to all those questions and have that come to our attention. But somebody was asking about the Panther draft tomorrow, which is, again, less than 24 hours away. And he was asking about drafting Saquon Barkley, possibly from a Panthers perspective, using draft picks to possibly move up and get to number 4 if Barkley is still available at that second spot that Cleveland would have. One of the things Marty Herney said was that they're not going to trade next year's number 1, which I think they would need to do if they end up going up and trying to make that move. In my mind, I don't know if you make that move, guys, to go up and take Saquon Barkley if you're the Panthers.
Well, it's a good question. You hate to pass on a great talent like that. It just depends on what your most pressing need is, and is the idea at that time to take the best player available or take the player that fills your most pressing need on your team. The Panthers, you know, have had their greatest success when they've had a great running game.
Mm-hmm.
When they've been able to move the ball on the ground to go along with their quarterback play, that's when they've made Super Bowls. So, maybe so. Maybe it's time to upgrade in the backfield, and if he's available and you feel like that's a way that you need to go, you make that move.
But don't you already have a guy like that in Christian McCaffrey?
Well, no, because the durability factor is there. You can use him in the passing game, but he's not one of those backs that you can ride, say, 20, 25, 30 carries a game. But I will say this. Julius Peppers has not found the fountain of youth anywhere.
No.
And as I said before, the most difficult thing is to find a tremendous defensive end who also is adept at playing the run. If I'm the Panthers and I'm moving up that high,
get Chubb.
I'm going up the interstate and get that guy from NC State and Bradley Chubb if I'm moving up that high, because I think I think you can find the Panthers with their offensive line. You can find a running back in the second and third round. I truly do believe that.
A running back, but do you find the special running back?
Yes,
as everybody says this guy is. I mean, would you have waited on O.J. Simpson until the second round? Would you have waited on Herschel Walker? I'm not saying this guy is in that category, but there's a lot of people who say he's one of the best running backs to come through in a long time.
Maybe not Bradley Chubb, but maybe Nick Chubb later on in the later rounds, possibly, or Darius Geis, Sony Michel. I mean, it's not like this draft does not have running back. I mean, Kerryon Johnson of Auburn also. I mean, there are plenty of opportunities, and I think Marty Herney said something very interesting about the draft, and we'll talk more about it tomorrow, but this draft is very horizontal in that there's a lot of players who can fit different needs based on what you do need. I still think the biggest need for the Panthers is a playmaking wide receiver. I think losing Kelvin Benjamin last year, I know that they still have Damiere Byrd and they'll get a full season out of him if he stays healthy. I still think they need somebody else to kind of take some attention away from Funchess, take some attention away. I know they signed Torrey Smith. You still think you need somebody who can take the top off the defense and somebody who can be a deep threat for Cam Newton.
Also, where the Panthers are drafting, here's what you get caught on when your team is just good enough to fall in that middle round. If it's a run on a position that you want, and those guys, like one year I remember, linebackers, a run just started, and you could see teams desperately trying to move up. They're going to take that linebacker before we can get him. You always want to see those teams in the middle to the latter part of the rounds if they're going to be desperate enough to trade up.
I mentioned offensive line. We were talking about it last night, and we checked a mock draft, didn't mention anything, but looking on the Panthers website, they compiled a list of mock drafts specifically for them. And the top guy, I guess this is the guy that's picked the most, maybe, or anyway, Will Hernandez, offensive guard from UTEP, projected to go 24th to the Panthers. That's by a couple of the NFL.com guys. Then there's a Hayden Hurst pick in there, and Mike Hughes, again, Jair Alexander. That's 3 Gamecocks right there. I'm just looking to see who else. Of course, Josh Jackson is a guy being mentioned a good bit as a possibility for them if they go for a corner. But it seems to be this Will Hernandez, the offensive lineman out of UTEP, is a direction the Panthers might move if they don't trade up.
Yeah.
Back to more on the Rice Commission findings, and I think as we talked about before, implementation probably is the biggest thing that we're looking for from them. But in my mind, Corn, the next step has to be addressing what happens with amateurism and whether or not guys can make money off their likeness. I know that you don't want to turn this into professional sports. You don't want it to mask that. You don't even want to make it look like that. But I don't think that they offered a clear enough answer as to why players can't make money off their likeness.
Condoleezza Rice made the statement basically that you are well compensated when you go to college, in that your education is paid for and everything else that I went over a little while ago. In her mind, that is thorough compensation for being a college athlete. When you look at the other students who are not on scholarship, who have to hold down jobs, who have to take out student loans, who have heavy debt loads, waiting for them when they graduate, when they get the same degree, you go as a college athlete on a full ride. That is worth a lot of money over a 3 or 4 year period if you stay and get your degree.
But I would counter by saying this, and I don't mean to get too political, but are you getting fair value back, number one? And number two, this kind of goes into what a lot of people are talking about right now politically when it comes to the value of a college degree and what you have to pay to get a college degree. I'm not saying that it should be free, but the price of what it costs to go to college is getting so inflated now that it's ridiculous.
Well, her words were basically that, yes, it is fair compensation for what you're getting. And, you know, look, not everybody that goes to college on an athletic scholarship, I hate to coin something from the NCAA, is going to turn professional athlete and make millions of dollars.
Right.
Very, very few do. So if you have a chance to go get an education and get a degree, a real degree, and it's all paid for, and you come out of college with no student loan debt or anything like that, and then you can go get a job, because A, you've got a degree, and B, you played for the state university, and so they help you find a job either in that university or somewhere in the neighborhood or in the state that's paying you $55,000, $60,000, $70,000 to start because of the fact that you got your degree and you were a football player for X university, and so we're going to help you find a job. Come on. Well, that is a good return on your time and investment.
It's a good return, but also if I'm one of these street agents or agents, I'm going to use that against you. You see those 80,000 people there, you know how much they pay per ticket? You're not getting any of that. Look at that arena how it's packed. You're not getting any of that.
Look at that coach's salary.
Look at that coach's salary. Look at the shoe contracts these guys.
But that's the way of the world, man. I mean, you go to work, you go out of college and you go to work for IBM. You're going to make X amount of dollars. Well, you know, Mr. Jones working up on the 74th floor, who's been in the company for 20 years and is pulling in $2.5 million. Should you be making as much as he does based on the fact that he's put his entire career into this company and helped build it into something? Are you owed something
but
because you come out of college?
But the unique thing is the people didn't pay to watch this 20-year coach the team. They came to see their team. They came to see
the quarterback talent with the hair. That's what they came to see.
In other words, what I'm saying is, if you want to do it this way, that's fine. But know that you're leaving the door open for that street agent or that shoe contract or that agent.
Not anymore with these recommendations. If they take them to heart and they work on
under the table, baby.
Does capitalism not matter in college athletics, though? Does it?
Nope.
Welcome back to Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. I don't know if the Blue Hose dream just died on one swing, but with one swing, the Clemson Tigers have taken the lead on Presbyterian by a score of 4-2. They play in the third inning at Doug Kingsmore Stadium. We'll keep you abreast of that game as it goes throughout the evening. Clemson this weekend at Virginia. South Carolina, 4 wins in a row. They will take on Vanderbilt this weekend in Nashville. Check out FoundersFCU.com as Sports Talk. A fine sponsor of Sports Talk is Founders Federal Credit Union. They can assist you with all of your financial needs. FoundersFCU.org. Corn, we have the head coach of the Newberry Wolves on the line, Todd Knight.
Indeed, we do. I'm sure he's not too upset that PC's losing to Clemson in baseball. Now, are you?
That's never a bad thing, is it, Phil?
Good to have you with us. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having us on, my friend.
Indeed. We're starting to check out you guys around the state on your spring practices and get your thoughts about your team looking ahead to the 2018 season. So what's your take on what you guys did in the spring overall?
Well, I was pleased with what I've seen. Defensively, we got a lot of kids back. I feel like we're pretty strong on that side of the ball. And, we've been doing the same thing on defense for quite a while now. The kids have bought into it, and they know what they're doing. Offensively, we revamped the offense, put in a new offense, hired a new OC, new offensive line coach, new tight ends guy. So I felt like the offense was a little bit behind the learning curve, therefore about half of spring ball, but they found their way in the second half, and especially the spring game, I think offensively they came out and performed really well. So I'm excited about what I've seen from the whole thing from start to finish.
Yeah, they did put a lot of yards up on the board in the spring game. So what things are you doing differently on offense?
Well, we brought Todd Barn from Presbyterian back over here with us. He was with me years ago as our new offensive coordinator. And I would with multiple on offense, but I would if I had to put us into a peg, a one-back veer team now. Oh. So establishing the run, a lot of play action, moving the pocket, that kind of thing, and a little bit different for us. We've always been a big zone team, so a good changeover. We really kind of concentrating on establishing the run. I feel like we have some athletic quarterbacks. If we can get them on the edge and do some things and spread them out of the pocket, I think we can take advantage of their athleticism.
Talking to Newberry head coach Todd Knight, team 5-6 a year ago, and I know that those probably are numbers you don't want to necessarily revisit, but what about that number and what about that result? What do you think needs to change the absolute most for you guys to reverse that and get on the positive side of the ledger?
Well, it was really close last year, losing ball games by 1, losing ball games by a field goal. So it was really close. The year before that, we kind of blew people out. We had a heavy senior crowd, that kind of thing. Losing a bunch of those kids from that year, it hurt us a little bit last year. But I feel like we had a good team, very competitive. Right there, it could have gone either way any week, just about. And I think we're close. I think quarterback play's got to improve from last year for us to turn the corner and get it back to where we want to be. And I think I've seen enough this spring. I feel like we can get that done.
Now, when you talk about running the football, are you looking more at if you get a working margin, a lead, you like to see a little bit more ball control, or are you looking at some ways to maybe reel some first downs together slowly to give your defense some rest on that sideline?
Exactly what I'm looking for. And not trying to put it all on quarterback's shoulders. I think a couple of years ago we did that. We had a guy that was ready and could handle that part of it. At this point, I think we've got some good athletes at the Q spot, but we need to take a little pressure off of them, and I hope that the running game can do that. And again, like you brought up, give our defense a little rest, because I feel like we've got a good crowd on that side.
Clemson up 5-2, bottom of the third on PC, as we talk to Newberry football coach Todd Knight about the spring. So is Greg Ruff clearly the guy at quarterback coming out of spring?
Greg has established himself as the starter coming out of spring. Nick Jones was part-time, banged up a little bit, didn't get to finish. We had a newcomer came in, and Dre Harris, a redshirt freshman, very athletic kid, still trying to learn and find his way. Greg's the guy for us right now. He can get it done with his feet. I think with some of the things that we're doing, moving the pocket and getting him out on the edge, that plays into his hands and, makes the passing game a little more clear for him, a little more clear cut. It's open, or I'm going to tuck it and get what I can get. And, I think the kid can get it done for us.
Either side of the football, coach, who's a player who opened your eyes over spring?
Well, Joe Blue's been that guy forever around here on defense. And, he didn't disappoint in spring ball. I think he's the best linebacker in our league. He's been first team all conference for years now. And he'll go out there and contend to be the defensive player of the year this upcoming season.
Joe Blue, that's the name we hadn't heard in a little while from his recruiting days coming out of Dillon. So, yeah, I know he's had a great career for you to this point. And has he done more than you thought he would do when he ended up coming to Newberry?
Early on, even from the very beginning, you could see it. Anybody could just walk in there and practice and go, okay, who's that guy?
Mm-hmm.
And, anytime you can walk in there and do that, kid's pretty special. Joe's been that way from the time he's walked on campus. And he's done nothing but get better and better every year, and I expect great things from him this senior season.
All right, so with PC moving down to non-scholarship status and playing in that Pioneer League, what's the chance of getting that Bronze Derby resurrected?
Boy, I would love to see it. And I think a lot of people on both sides would love to see it. A lot of people are talking about it. I don't know if it'll ever happen again. I would love to see it. I'd love to see it get rekindled. I think Coach Spangler over there would love to see it as well. But, unfortunately, Coach Spangler and I don't make decisions when it comes to that.
So, do we have to organize a march or something to get this done?
That could help. I'd be glad to lead it. Come on, get a crowd. Come on up here. Let's go.
Yeah, you don't want to get the legislature involved to try to make you guys play. But tell us this, as you prepare your team going forward, any interesting things you have for fall practice as you have to start your season with 2 games on the road?
Yeah, and that's tough, especially opening up at Western Carolina. Challenge there. Our kids are excited about it. Our coaching staff's fired up over it. But really good team. We got to go into it. In my opinion, hey, look, it's Western Carolina. It's our opener. It doesn't matter. Let's go up there and take a swing at them. It's a weird shaped ball. No telling how it's going to bounce. And let's go up and get after them. I want to have that attitude going into the spring. It really doesn't matter. Going into the fall, it really doesn't matter. If it's Western or Florida Tech on the road, let's go get after them. That's what I want our kids to have, that kind of attitude. It doesn't matter who it is. Let's go.
You mentioned the defenses, the offense racking up all those yards. How hard does it make it to evaluate the defense when you have these spring games that are basically designed to try and get offensive showcase across your practice there?
Right. And you call it a spring game, but it's just a glorified practice for us. It was that day, just spot the ball and let's get some good reps. I know what we have defensively. I'm glad our offense showed up at the spring game, and I think they had a good day. They didn't turn the football over, racked up a lot of yards, but, ball position, we just placing it in certain spots for them. that kind of thing. You know, kind of putting the defense at a little disadvantage from time to time. So it's hard to gauge it. I'm glad to see us have a little success offensively, but I feel pretty confident that defensively we can get it done.
All right, real quick, Coach, got about 45 seconds. Any injuries from the spring that's going to hurt you going into the fall?
No, not really. We came out of it pretty clean, Phil. You know, I worry about a 165-pound co-eds more than I do concussions. They can do way much more damage.
Okay, we're going to leave it at that.
There you go.
And we thank you so much for being with us. Enjoy the spring and summer, and we'll see you in the fall.
Thank you for having us on, my friend.
You got it.
The affable Newberry head coach, Todd Knight, joining us here on Sports Talk.
He's worried about 165-pound co-eds doing more damage than concussions. Okay, good.
I have nothing else to add to that.
No.
Hey, a little recruiting note here. Derek Hunter, also known as Rambo, linebacker, announced a short list tonight. Clemson's on it. Clemson, Florida State, Florida, Georgia, Texas A&M, Tennessee, Penn State, and Miami make up his top 8. And at least he did it when he said he was going to do it on time.
There's an onion that I want to peel back on a particular recruiting note with you when we come back, and we'll also update what's going on at Doug Kingsmore with Clemson and Presbyterian on Sports Talk.
These guys, they never sleep. Check them out on the web at SportsTalkSC.com. Now, more of Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network.
5-2, Clemson leads Presbyterian. That game in the bottom of the third inning with the Tigers threatening, trying to get a two-out rally. Looks like Green is at the plate right now for Clemson. Jordan Green. We'll keep you updated on what's going on there at Kingsmore. Had a little interesting NBA playoff topic we wanted to bring up here at the end. You had some updates about what's going on with USC women's golf for the NCAA.
Yeah, I've just announced the field for the NCAA women's golf tournament. USC is going to San Francisco, number 3 seed in that regional. 72 teams are in the field, divided among 4 sites. USC will play in the 54-hole events at TPC Harding Park, May 7 through 9.
It's a nice course. Top
6 teams from each regional site will advance to the NCAA championship in Stillwater, Oklahoma. So we see
also
that USC is in, and I don't have the entire field, so I don't know if anybody else from the state made it in or not. Let's see. Here is the San Francisco regional, and USC is the only team from our state in that regional. UCLA is the number 1 seed, and Stanford is the number 2 seed.
So, DJ Burns, you mentioned the possibility of him reclassifying, and of course, South Carolina could use players in the worst way. 6'9" kid. I'm not saying that they wouldn't gladly take him. I think Frank Martin is not in a position right now to be balking at anybody who wants to come play basketball for him, just based on all the departures. But how would a player like DJ Burns help South Carolina, and would he be able to have an immediate impact in your mind?
Well, he's big, number 1. He's 6'9", wide-bodied, so that would be one thing. He's easily confusable with Zion Williamson in the appearance department, apparently, because remember when he visited USC for a basketball game, and some Gamecock fans thought it was Zion Williamson, which it was not. But, you know, he's got – I've never seen him play, so I can't tell you firsthand what his game is like. I know his reputation is big, and he's got a lot of big-time offers. And he's going to have Larry Davis coaching him this year. And certainly Larry Davis, with his background in basketball, his championship pedigree will certainly be of some use for him. But he's a big guy, and he brings, you know, big guy skills with him, as best as I can tell. So knowing South Carolina's current roster situation, like you said, Frank Martin can ill afford not to bring in anybody of consequence that he can get into the program right now.
Clemson will play, by the way, in the Tallahassee regional. Just to update you here, we have that now from the folks at Clemson. So all of these are kind of coming out as we go here. Again, they'll be in the NCAA women's tournament there as a number 8 seed in the Tallahassee regional. They'll be one of the 18 teams that were basically they'll play from May 7th through the 9th. They'll be at Don Veller Golf Club. It's a course it's about 14 years old. Robert C. Walker has that course architecture there. We'll continue here. We were talking a little bit amongst the office here about the NBA playoffs, and we don't do too much NBA here, but I think it's an interesting kind of open up the cerebellum, if you will, when it comes to the NBA. And 2 big players are kind of getting their opportunity to take on the NBA playoffs by storm, not necessarily for the first time, but at least in a larger way. Giannis Antetokounmpo and Anthony Davis, if you were building a team, which one of those 2 would you have on your roster?
It's a good question. I mean, one's a little more established than the other, but the other one is Antetokounmpo is sort of he's the flavor of the day right now because he's playing so well, except for, the Celtics made a really smart move last night, starting Ojale, a kind of a big-bodied, strong-legged forward on him and bodying him up. And afterwards, he talked about, Giannis talked about only taking 10 shots and that he needed to take more shots. Well, part of that was because of the way he was D'd up. He had a guy sticking to him, not letting him just back his way down towards the rim. The Celtics want him to take mid-range jumpers because that's the weakness in his game right now. And so the key is not letting him get his angles to the rim. And Ojale was able to do that because he's a big, strong guy. He's not as tall, but he's a big, strong guy. So personally, based on the body of work to this point, if I were starting up a team and had those two to choose, I would take Anthony Davis.
Antetokounmpo.
I knew you would go the other way.
No, here's why. Anthony Davis has proven one thing in the NBA other than his talent. He is tremendously injury prone. I mean, I think he's had.
But what makes somebody injury prone? I mean, bad luck.
I'm not so certain.
Not
Not all the time. It's sometimes,
except for Sam Bowie.
Sometimes it's something
or
about
Greg Oden. I mean, sometimes you got some things wrong with you, but wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah, sometimes it's your body type though. You know, the NBA is a grind because if you look at it and you talk about preseason, they don't play as many minutes, but you're talking about the travel, the schedule, and Antetokounmpo has a wiry body, which I think he can run the floor. I think that's a big key for him. Watch Milwaukee make some adjustments off what Boston did at home, and then they'll free him up. That's how it's always done. A great NBA playoff that goes 7 games, it's a chess match. And it's you'd made this adjustment, we're going to make this counter adjustment. But and that's the only knock against him, because I thought when Davis got into the league, he was going to be a tremendous player. The only problem right now is he's got to get over this injury bug he has, and he may have to change his diet and do some other things. But I think he's a tremendous pro. But I just take the younger guy.
I think Antetokounmpo is, outside of LeBron James, the most unguardable player in the NBA. That's the thing I think that stands out about him the most to me. I mean, you can even say Ben Simmons is probably in that category too. But I think so much of what he can do, as he's almost like a LeBron James who's a better shooter in a way. And LeBron has always kind of been talked about as somebody who has had kind of hot and cold shooting performances. A lot of his game, again, lives above the rim, not as much now that he's gotten older and he's had to kind of develop more of a jump shot in his arsenal. But in my mind, Giannis does all the things that a young LeBron could do and all the things that an older LeBron can do. I don't know if you get that out of Anthony Davis. And the other thing is that Anthony Davis represents kind of the bygone era of the NBA, you know, the traditional big man who can play with his back to the basket, but also can step back and shoot. You know, to me, I think Giannis represents more of the future of the NBA than it does the NBA's past. That's why I'd go with him.
Mm. How old is Anthony Davis? Like 25?
25.
It's not like he's a granddad.
No.
Or here are some of the injuries he has suffered.
He is 25.
A right quad contusion, a sprained left thumb, a bruised left hip, a lower leg contusion, a sore quad, a lower back, a sprained ankle, concussion, sore shoulder, right hip strain, sprained shoulder, sore groin, sprained left toe, chest contusion, back spasms.
That's a red flag to me.
A finger and a fractured left hand. I mean, the spasms, yes.
That's a red
flag. But that
flag
could
to
be
me.
also the result of hitting the, Larry Bird suffered a lot of back problems because he hit the floor so much.
Right.
And Anthony Davis is the same way. He plays relentless. He plays all out. He gives his body up. But I'm saying these injuries these are the result of hard playing and going after loose balls and diving into the stands and hitting the floor hard. It's not because he was born with some sort of issue that's going to leave him with
everything you mentioned.
Born with a concussion.
Antetokounmpo does the same thing, but he hadn't been injured.
Well, he's younger, and he doesn't play the same way.
But he's
like you said. Anthony Davis is more of a he'll shoot the outside shot, but he's more of a back to the basket type of guy,
which you don't see a lot.
Giannis is more of a stand outside. He's like a taller, thinner LeBron in that he likes to get up ahead of speed and go to the basket.
Oh yeah.
I do want to mention some of the other teams that are in that Tallahassee Regional involve in-state schools, including Furman, Coastal Carolina, and College of Charleston, along with Clemson. And as you mentioned, South Carolina is in San Francisco in the NCAA Women's Golf Regional. 5-2 Clemson leads Presbyterian. They're in the bottom of the fourth. We'll check that out for you on Sports Talk tomorrow. We'll preview the weekend series as well. Morgan on the move tomorrow as well, and more previews of spring football. Sports Talk is over for today. Ta-ta.